I woke up in one of the beds several hours later with an unimaginable headache. I was back in one of the rooms in the mansion. As I looked around the dimly lit space, I finally found Destiny sitting in the chair to my side. Who hit me this time? I asked as I tried to move. Huh? She asked sleepily. Apparently hadn't nodded off at some point. What? Nobody, you... Oh my god, you're awake? She suddenly shouted before poofing away. Hey, he's awake! I heard her shout somewhere down the hall before reappearing next to me once again. Oh my god, how are you? Are you okay? Nobody hit you. Your nose just started pouring blood and then you passed out. I tried to catch you, but you hit your head on the floor pretty hard and we couldn't wake you up and... Hey, shh, calm down, I'm okay. I think. I told her she dropped her head into my lap before Nehushtan came strolling through the door. Well, this was a little more than alarming, she told me as she stood next to the now sobbing Destiny. What happened to me? I asked her from my place on the bed. In my expert opinion, she said before thinking for a second, I have absolutely no idea. Sprung one hell of a leak there. Pretty sure that's the end of this shirt, she told me, holding up the t-shirt where I could see what she meant. I almost felt sick seeing how much I'd really bled. I thought they were being dramatic, but the whole front of the shirt was completely dark. Huh? What? I suddenly heard Abigail shout from the floor above me before I heard her footsteps as they stomped across the upstairs floor. I'd expected her to just turn and run down the stairs, but instead she just kept heading straight for the railing. The next thing I knew, I heard a sculling sound as she came crawling through the door on the ceiling by all fours, like some kind of animal. Oh my god! I screamed, not remotely expecting to see that. What the hell, Abigail? I continued to shout as she dropped from the ceiling and onto the bed next to me. What happened? Are you better now? Do you need anything? Are you hungry? She ignored me, her nose barely an inch from mine. I'll be fine, just don't do that ever again, I sighed, pushing her back. Actually, is there any more of that stuff Mika made for I started to say, but before I could finish, she'd already jumped and latched onto the ceiling and was scuttling back towards the kitchen. Well, that was fucking horrifying, I said to myself as I watched the braided ponytail vanish from sight. Yeah, just wait until my dad finds out she's punching even more holes in his house with her claws, Destiny mumbled into my lap. What? She doesn't have claws? Not normally. The kind of vampire she is, their fingernails and toenails are always growing really fast and pointed and strong, so they have to clip them several times a day or they start growing claws. She continued to mumble. If she lets them grow, she can, do the spider thing. Can you tell her to not? Destiny, I'm serious. It's only gonna take one time of me waking up and seeing her crawl across my bedroom ceiling and my soul will violently leave my body by the way of my asshole. Oh, will she be living in our apartment too now? She asked, her voice sharpening a little. Ouch. Okay, I get it. Just let my head stop pounding before you get on to me again, please. I requested as I laid back down. But as long as you're bringing it up, you really think it's okay for her to live by herself in that shop the way she does? What? No, she doesn't. It just seems like it because she's there all the time. No, Destiny. Do you really not know that she lives in that shop? No, I just thought she spent way too much time. She paused before walking over to the door and sticking her head out. Hey, Abigail! What? Abigail called back. You'll live here now, Destiny shouted in the hall. Huh? Abigail asked, confused by the declaration. I said you'll live here now. Okay. I heard Abigail surrender after another short pause. What about you can have the attic? It's been empty since Jackal blew himself across the yard. There's plenty of room for your stuff up there. What about the... Abigail tried to ask, but Destiny was way ahead of her again. Hey, Dad, come in here, she shouted even louder into the air. About the same time, Abigail came around the corner with a tray in her hand. Count popped up between her and Destiny. You screamed? He asked softly, but I knew that tone. It was one any parent gets when their kid yells them into a room. Abigail wants to live with us now. Is that okay? He didn't answer at first. He just slowly turned around and stared down at her for a second before saying, "Was she not already?" "Oh, no, Jose mentioned that she's been living alone in that shop, and the attic wasn't being used anymore, so..." No, I understand. We cannot allow that. I will have the shutters replaced up there to keep the sunlight out during the day. He stopped before vanishing. A second later, he suddenly popped back up before saying, "Oh, and I see you're awake. I'm glad you are okay. We were all very worried about you. If you should find yourself in need of anything, do not hesitate to ask," he told me before disappearing again. What the hell is wrong with me? I said to myself as I wandered through the halls once I was finally able to talk my way out of bed. And the hush thing gave me a clean bill of health, of course. I had to take a second to stop and pull myself together, genuinely worried about the fact that I just started gushing blood and passed out. And that's when I heard a sound. Bare feet running across the hardwood floor behind me. It sounded like they stopped just short of running into my back. So I turned around to see a young girl. "Okay, who are you now?" I asked, but she didn't answer. Instead, she just started pacing in circles around me. She was dressed in what almost looked like rags covered in faded patterns. Her black hair was dirty and was long enough to cover most of her face and brush the ground behind her as she walked. "Okay, cousin, and what's your boggle? You just fall out of an old VHS tape or something?" "Hey, no, wait. I've seen you before. Who?" I started to ask, but she turned around and took off running down the hall. Shorty reached the end of the hall and started running up a flight of stairs by the time I got there. I could hear the sound of her feet as she ran up the steps. By then, I was already starting to get a little nervous. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as I turned to follow up the staircase. I took a step. Thump. Another step. Thump. A few more steps. Thump. Finally, I made it to the top of the stairs and reached forward to push the door to the side. The beating stops as I walk into an almost empty room, except for one person on the other end. "Count?" I asked as he reached down to pick a hammer back up, his other hand holding a wooden plank up to the wall. The sight was so jarring, seeing him kneeling there in ratty old work clothes and not the more posh and elegant attire you'd normally catch him in. Jose, could you come hold this board in place for me, please? I need a good place to attach the new shutters for Abigail before she can move in," he asked before waving me over. "Oh yeah, sure, let me get that for you." I jogged over to where he'd pressed the 2x4 against the wall so he could tap the nails into place. Much easier," he said with a sigh as he took another nail out of the sour cream container he'd been using as a container for the nails. You know Hephaestus is still down there, right? He'd probably... No. That is okay. This I can do myself." The Count stopped me as he moved the next nail into place. "I should do this myself, I think," he adds as he carefully hammers it into the wood. "So, what brings you here, young man?" "Oh, heard the construction noises. Came to see what was making it," I told him. Not wanted to just come out and say I was chasing a phantasm around the mansion. Yes. I used to do this kind of thing much more often. It used to be much more hazardous to hire laborers to do this kind of work for me, you see." "Oh yeah, torches and pitchforks and all that. I see where you're going," I replied as he hammers another nail into place. "So, I actually wanted to talk to you about something," I added as I helped hold another board in place. "What would that be?" he asked, placing another nail into position. "It's about the maid, your daughter." As soon as I say that, I hear a dull thump, followed by a shaky, as he moved the hammer away from his thumb. "Jose, I do not..." he tried to say, but I stopped him. No, hear me out first. I think I'm coming over to your side on the issue. I mean... Okay, so I think seeing how many deals with how many devils we have to make to deal with her the right way with Ryan, I don't think it's the right way to go around it, you know? I tell him as he rubs his thumb, staring out into the dark through the open window. What makes you say that? Count asks as he leans back against the wall. Well, so far, I've gotten to know her better than anyone here, and I see more of you in her than Athena. Most of the time, she's pretty mellow, you know? Seems like she just wants to be left alone to her own devices. Drink her weird, grape-flavored sodas. Eat her Go-Gurts. She likes Go-Gurts too? He asked, with a shaky voice, as he placed his hand over his mouth. The statement seemingly shaking a nerve. Here, let me finish this up for you, I told him, taking the hammer from him and picking a new nail out of the cup. She's had it pretty tough, but I think being around Abigail as much as I have, I think I see that it's all about where you end up when you come out on the other side of something like that. Who you end up with. Abigail got lucky and ended up running right into Mika. I don't think she'd be the same now if she didn't. But in this case, she came out of that and ran right into the worst possible person, you know? I continued to speak as I worked on the window. You know? I repeated, turning to see that he wasn't there anymore. Huh. Yeah, I get it. I sighed, holding the board in place and feeling around for the next nail. Oh, that's better. I groaned as I laid back in the bed they'd left me in earlier. I didn't want to use Destiny's in case I sprung another leak. But I was also tired from fixing up the shutters upstairs, so I needed a nap. Are you sure you're okay? A small voice suddenly asked from beside me. I rolled over on my side to see Abigail standing there by the side of the bed. Yeah, I think so. My head still kinda hurts though, I reassured her. I'm sorry for always hitting you and everyone else. I can't help it sometimes. I don't know why I do it. I just want to say, she said as her voice started to shake a little. Whoa, hey, I said to her as I grabbed her wrist. Just listen to me for a second. I'm not mad at you about that. I was, but now I kind of understand. Abigail, you literally went through a living hell. The things that happened to you. So don't blame yourself for what that did to you, okay? Because I don't. And well, that really did it, because the floodgates opened. Can I have another hug? She finally hiccuped through the sobbing. Yeah, come here. It's okay, I told her as she fell forward and I wrapped my arms around her. As she was still mid-cry, I could see Destiny over her shoulder, with a hand over her mouth trying not to cry herself. After a second, she moved her hand and mouthed, Is she okay? To me. I think so, I mouthed back as Abigail continued to sob. After a while, she ended up crying herself to sleep, and Destiny slipped in and crawled up beside us on the bed. Any reason you aren't in my bed instead? She asked when she was under the covers. Didn't want to get my nose blood on your bed if I started leaking again, I answered as Abigail was bundled up at the foot of the bed like a Labrador. I don't think she's ever done that before. Just break down like that, Destiny said softly as she scooted up against me. I bet it's because she feels safe around you. More than she does around anyone else. I didn't think she'd ever open up like she has since she met you and Louis. You two have really got her to come out of her shell. Rejoin society. Be happy again. I guess she's still got some stuff to work through though. Yeah, I guess so. I just thought she was some cranky kid when we first met. Seems like forever ago now. But I can tell now she was lonely. Not with her thoughts, those memories, day after day. I'd probably be angry all the time too, you know? I said as I wiggled deeper down into the bed. I think it'll be good, her living here with you guys. I can't believe I never knew she lived in her shop. All this time? And you said she was locked in a safe for like a decade? She needs somewhere she can let her guard down. I think she lived in her shop all this time because she has all the movie props everywhere. She was comfortable around them. Destiny said softly as she started to drift off. Yeah, Yeah, I think maybe I'll point it towards Dr. Angeline once things finally cool down. I told her as my eyes started to get heavy enough to outweigh the anxiety of what I was about to have to do. Knock, knock, knock. God, this feels weird, I thought to myself as I knocked on the door to my apartment. A few seconds later, the door slowly cracks open and I see a hazel eye looking through the small slit. "What do you want?" the maid asked, her eyes squinting with suspicion as she spoke. "I do still live here, you know," I answered as I tried to push my way in. "Now move, so I can't... Shit!" I yelped as she moved the door out of the way, let me fall face first into the apartment. "I'm serious. What do you want? What are you doing?" she asked again as I picked myself off the floor. "I'm making sure you're not in here breaking my shit," I told her as I looked around the living room and inspected everything I had reluctantly left behind, my eye briefly falling on the hammer that hadn't moved from where it had been set the night Hemsworth forgot to take it with him. Huh. Whoops, I said under my breath, realizing that meant I also forgot to take it back to him. "I told you I wouldn't touch your stuff, and I haven't." "So, are you happy now?" she asked as I checked the now almost empty cabinets. "Well, food doesn't count." "Just a t-shirt and shorts?" I asked from the kitchen. "Finally give up on the maid shtick?" "I'm off to Clark right now," she answered, pointing over at the couch and the TV that had some show paused on the screen. "Okay, one last thing. Any chance I can talk you out of this whole evil scheme?" "No," she answered plainly. "Not a chance." "Alrighty then," I said as I reached for the doorknob. "Oh, wait," I added, turning back into the room to face her. "It's been bugging me for a while now. When you make the outfits, is it like real fabric, or what's going on there?" "What? Yeah, I don't know how it works, but it's whatever fabric I'm thinking about. Haven't bought clothes in centuries," she answered, holding her arms up to look at the shirt hanging off her shoulders. Can I feel it?" I asked cautiously. "Yeah, whatever," she said, putting her hands on her hips and sticking her chest out. I felt my hands start to shake as I slowly reached out towards her, getting close enough to be certain of what I had already suspected, that she wasn't wearing a bra, which was something I hadn't thought about. "Well, here goes," I said as I grabbed the hem of her shirt. As soon as I got a good grip, I snatched the bottom of the shaggy shirt up over her face and behind her head. I took the short pause from the shock to drive my shoulder into her gut, pushing her back and over the coffee table that was just behind her, sending her whole body backwards as her heel hit the table and her back hit the floor. Shit, I yelled as I came whipping out of the apartment and around the corner. I'm sorry! I added. The thought that she wouldn't be wearing anything under the shirt never occurred to me when I came up with the plan. But I didn't have time to think of anything else. I just had to commit to the bit and run with it. "I am going to skin you alive!" I hear her roar from the apartment as I try to keep just the right amount of space between us as I run towards the stairwell. "I swear, I'm really sorry. I am!" I shouted back one more time as she came stumbling out the door. Destiny was right. She can't poof if she isn't thinking straight, I thought as she started heading my way. "Not as sorry as you're gonna be!" she bellowed as her feet slipped over the gravel. That was when I had to buckle down to make sure she didn't catch me. I was already halfway down the stairs when I heard her reach the top of them and start following me down. "For what it's worth, they were really nice. Wasn't expecting the piercings, though," I shouted over my shoulder, trying to make sure she stayed too mad to poof and catch me. And that's when I felt my foot slip. The next thing I knew, I was at the bottom of the stairs as I felt a warm liquid start to trickle down my face. I didn't have time to shake off the fog of the impact before I felt a set of hands tighten around my neck and lift me off the ground. "What is wrong with you?" The irate woman howled into my face as I felt her bear down even harder. I tried to say something, but she was already squeezing too hard for me to speak, so I took the small object from my pocket, aimed it, and hit the button. UV rays from the light I found in Jackal's lab hit her dead in the face, causing her to drop me and recoil back all at once as she rubbed her clenched fist into her eyes to wipe away the cause of the unexpected pain. "What the hell did you just do? Desperate times, desperate measures." I coughed back at her as I took off again before she was able to stop rubbing her eyes. "UVC, it's like sunlight on crack. I'm going to scalp you with a plastic spoon." I heard a bellow behind me as she fell around blindly before she could get her vision back. I knew I was pushing my luck at that point, but I had to just keep the right distance not to lose her. "You just got your ass kicked by a flashlight. You better watch that tone with me," I warned, fighting every impulse I had to keep my mouth shut and hide in some dark corner somewhere. I waited for her next freakout, but even more to my horror, it was just quiet. "Oh God, I don't like that," I thought to myself, the dead silence and stillness in the air almost making me slide to a stop. That's when I felt the fast-moving rubble from the concrete wall pepper my face as she came crashing through it all at once, sending marble-sized shrapnel straight at me. Knowing I'd probably push my luck as far as I could, I took off at a full sprint and she lunged at me through the pale dust that lingered in the air. One last time I heard her feet slip on the loose rubble beneath her, giving me only a second's head start as a clawed hand just barely missed me. But that was all I needed. I only had to make it around the next corner and... "Hit it!" I shouted as I came around and saw everyone else there. Tom flipped the switch on the machine next to him just as the maid came into view, bathing her in the wall of UVC. There was a sudden shriek before she disappeared, leaving only the signature lingering black mist in a place. And then the light went out as the sound of crunching metal rang through the massive, open space we'd found ourselves in. I just stood there and watched as she slowly pulled her hand away from the ruins of the UV light they'd set up beforehand. But it was too late. The first and second parts of the plan had already worked. We got her down into the subspace and had her run headfirst into a massive dose of UV light. It might not be a lot, but it was hopefully enough to take her down a notch. And by the looks of her, it had. The downside, as much as I had managed to piss her off, that made it infinitely worse. But before she could get me back in his sights, she'd already started to realize what was going on. Or at least, that's what I thought. It didn't take long before I heard the sounds of footsteps from behind me. Many, many footsteps. I turned to see a literal mob of angels, all dressed in white as they piled in from the entrance. "Looks like your plan wasn't airtight as you thought," I heard a familiar voice speak from the crowd. A second later, I saw the still bandaged face of Harley step to the front. "It just takes one little leak to sink a ship," she mocked as she took her place in front of everyone. "Hey, Harley. I was starting to enjoy seeing less of you, if I'm honest. Think we can maybe try that sometime?" I asked, still trying to slow my breathing back down. "Sink a ship. Let's see how that goes." I sighed as I saw the pointy tip of a red bandana peeking just over the heads of the crowd. "Louie, you guys there?" I asked over my shoulder as I heard the sound of footsteps from that direction. "Louie? Hey, Lou?" "Had you go in there for a second, didn't I?" he asked with a quick laugh that almost made me panic. "Yeah, we're here. Told you she'd show up. Just had to make it seem like I accidentally let it slip," he added, pointing over at Holly. "Wait, what did he say? What did you just say?" Holly suddenly barked when she heard what Louis said. "Why would you possibly want more of us down here with you?" "Because werewolves need food to change," Mika answered as she walked around from behind the crowd. "And I would not have been able to fit through the entrance if I had already changed before." After a second of thought, one of the men in white spoke. "But we didn't bring any food with us?" He trailed off, suddenly realizing what she was talking about. A look of horror washing over his face as his words died down. And then, through the bandages, I could see the same look of terror in Harley's eyes. But if it wasn't from what Mika had said, she was looking at something behind me. That's when I noticed her foot move as she took a step back. Take one more step, and you die first. I heard Athena's voice crawl over my shoulder as she warned Harley not to move. Jose, dear, I think it's time you get out of the way, she added as she stepped around in front of me. Yep, I answered as I hurried back towards where Louie, Johnny, Chris, and Madison were standing, still trying to keep a little distance from Tom. As I moved around behind her, that's where I could see where she'd been keeping some kind of strange sword hidden behind her back. And in that moment, an invasive thought occurred. If I make it out of this alive, I need to see if Abigail can get me Major Payne's knife from the movie. The things I think about when I'm about to die, I swear. I guess because the shape was the same or something? Who knows? But you know what they say, speak of the devil. Please try not to get killed. It's probably gonna get ugly, Abigail warned as she walked up beside me. Maybe stay behind me until things calm down, she suggested. As demoralizing as it was to take cover behind someone who looks like a 13-year-old girl, I did what she said, knowing I wasn't nearly as resilient to catastrophic damage as she was. Plus, her being near me might be enough to keep the angels from trying to abscond with me during the chaos. Mind if I kick things off? I heard Louie ask from beside me. Oh, by all means, I hear Chris answer. This was your idea after all? What in that twisted little brain of yours makes you think you can do anything to me? The maid asks, almost offended at the notion by the sounds in her voice. You're just some low-level thug. Oh, I absolutely agree, Louie responds, moving to the front of the group. I'm just a crook, Magoon, muscle for hire. So are the rest of us at the end of the day. But as a very wise man once said, we are not Happy Fun Time Friends LLC. We are Dirty Work Inc. We aren't the good guys. We're a necessary evil. And we're all here because we've done some pretty shady shit to get things done. Shady shit like, for example, I don't know, kidnapping someone's wife and children, threatening their lives to get someone in an opposing organization to strap a bunch of cutting charges to their body. Kinda like this. He finished before several sets of arms suddenly wrapped themselves around the maid all at once, giving Louie just enough time to jump out of the way. Before... oh my God, my ears! I groaned as I felt around through the settling dust. Louie, what the hell did you do? What? Was I not being clear? He coughed as he waved the dust away from his face. You presented a problem. We presented a solution. Louie, I did not tell you to kidnap people's families and blackmail them into being suicide bombers. And you'll never have to. He assured me with a pat on the shoulder. No, that's not what I meant. I trailed off as I heard the shifting sound from ground zero. I tried to take a few steps back, but as I did, I felt a sharp twinge of pain in my leg. I glanced down to see what was wrong, to find, sticking from the meat of my thigh, a bone. A human bone that wasn't mine. A piece of one of those guys who grabbed the maid had lodged itself into me. About that time, I was able to see far enough in front of me to see Abigail still standing near the same spot, with a lot of her missing. Her whole left arm was gone. Half her left thigh had been torn away, along with another chunk missing from her calf. You okay? She asked before her leg gave out and she dropped to the ground. Move. I'll be fine. Just give me a minute, she snapped, swatting me away as I bent down to try and help her. Look, she said, directing me to where the muscle in her leg started to regrow. That's when I noticed the rest of her body seemed to be getting thinner. Her body was shifting materials around to heal the massive wounds. Don't worry, I'll take care of this, she said as she pushed me away. Pay attention to what's going on. As she said that, I could still hear the stirring in the distance. I turned to see the maid in a shredded outfit stand, her arms snapping back into place as her clothes began to mend themselves. That's when I could see from behind her a figure on the ground, beginning to grow. I almost gagged as I saw the now wolf-like Mika swallow almost an entire arm whole after she ripped it loose from the mutilated and blood-soaked body at her feet. The second the maid turned to see what I'd fixated on, Athena took her chance and disappeared. Or at least it seemed that way. The force of her foot bearing down on the ground left a crater in the concrete. The maid only had a fraction of a second to react, snapping her whole body back to get her neck out of the path of Athena's blade, and it sliced through the lingering fabric of the white frills on her dress. That's when there was no doubt left. Athena was playing for keeps. She had every intent to kill the maid, and that became even more obvious as she continued hacking away at whatever part of the maid was closest to her. But the second the maid was able to get off her heels and plant her feet, the tides turned. In one instant she vanished, and in the next she was behind Athena with a handful of her hair, slamming her down into the concrete and causing rubble to fly out in all directions. But in the time that took, Mika was already on top of her. I could finally see her clearly, and the full view almost froze my blood in my veins. The pitch-black fur that covered her whole body was only broken up by the blood still dripping from her mouth. In the grayish-white patch of fur on her face, vaguely in the pattern of a pale skull. The snarling and snapping only made it all the worse as she latched onto the maid with her teeth, snatching her up into the air by her neck and shaking her violently like a dog mauling a rat. Then it all suddenly came to a stop the second the maid's feet touched the ground. Before Mika knew what happened, the maid had thrown her almost 8-foot-tall body over her hip and buried her into the ground next to Athena, who had just been extracting herself from her own crater. By then, the angels in the background were beginning to stir, seemingly not knowing what they were supposed to do at that point. Some were still on the ground, injured by the blast. Others were shuffling around like they were looking for cover. And then I realized why. Athena had paused just long enough for Mika to get back on her feet. Then, in the blink of an eye, all hell broke loose. It's hard to say exactly what happened on account of I couldn't keep up. All I could see was the aftermath as chunks of concrete were ripped up and scattered in all directions from the impacts of their feet against the surface. I could hear the grunts and groans of everyone around me as they were peppered by the small pieces of flying rubble. And that's when I noticed it wasn't hitting me. The second thing I noticed was the ground itself. There was a space just near me with no damage at all compared to the rest of the area. Then, someone else noticed too. I looked up just in time to see Athena slide to a stop, staring at the ground in front of me. And then I saw the look she gave me when the thought occurred to her. I could barely see her hand move before a bleeding hand was only a few feet from my face. The fingers gripped tightly around the blade of Athena's sword that she'd just thrown straight at my head. I was frozen solid as I watched the fresh blood flow from the wound and stain the white glove red. The maid was the one who caught it just before it could reach me. All I could think to do in the moment as our eyes met was sheepishly ask, "Why?" Not entirely sure if I was asking why she just saved my ass or why Athena just tried to kill that same ass of mine. But apparently I wasn't the only one who was surprised, because all the maid could do was shrug with an equally surprised look on her face. I don't know. We really didn't have time to sort it out because almost immediately, Athena was right in front of me as she snatched her sword away from the maid's hand, causing several of her fingers to drop to the ground freely. Before I could react, Athena was already behind me with a handful of my hair and the edge of the sword resting against my neck. Stay right there, she warned the maid as she shifted to take a step. I was willing to kill him just to test an idea, after all. So, you know I will, she added as I felt a sharp edge break my skin. By then, Mika had caught up with current events and had come to a dead stop, looking back and forth from everyone as she tried to figure out who was on whose side. Was she fighting with Athena, who was her mother, to beat the maid who was also her sister? Was she fighting the maid, her sister, to stop Athena, her mother to save me? She was definitely as confused as I was. So, What happens next? Athena finally asked once the stillness had time to set in. But that question answered itself as I saw out of the corner of my eye the red glow as new fingers formed on the maid's hand, as the red-stained glove began to fade away, revealing the blackening skin underneath. I followed it up her arm as the rest of the fabric vanished, and a familiar form the Count had taken that night at the Halloween party was something unmistakably similar. The whites of her eyes yellowed, her skin darkened to an inky black. The once jet-black hair now gave off an ominous red glow, and the burning light in her chest shone through, casting the shadow of her ribs against her skin. But the scariest part, that whole time, her eyes never left Athena's, even for a moment. I felt my body begin to tense on its own, getting ready for whatever came next, but whatever I was expecting, it wasn't.
I got all of the stuff out of your apartment like you asked,
Relic said proudly as he randomly popped up in the middle of the standoff, temporarily directing everyone's attention towards him, but before any one of us had time to even process that. I finally found him, Destiny suddenly shouted as she poofed out of nowhere between us, but she trailed off when she saw the situation I found myself in. Jose, what? She started to ask, but was interrupted by, Got her! One thing you have to remember is that whilst Relic is a militant pacifist, John Hamry is not. Destiny had been interrupted by him letting us know he'd found his nail, and swung his hammer. I only just saw the hammer make contact as a blinding light and thunderous roar filled the open space. I felt the ground itself shift beneath me, and just like that, the maid was gone, buried into the concrete wall, for a moment. It didn't take long before the sound of movement could be heard as she began to claw at her face. The confusion, the sudden chaos Destiny had caused vanished. The next thing I knew, I couldn't feel Athena against me anymore, before Destiny suddenly reappeared in front of me. Go! She yelled, pushing me back as a clawed, glowing hand reached its way out of the massive hole in the wall. Giving my head a quick shake, I started to run. I knew I just had to make it past a certain point. I could hear loose rubble falling free from the crater as the maid's feet touched the ground. Just a little further, I thought as I ran. I knew it wouldn't be much long before she caught up to us. Almost there. There you go! The Minotaur shouts as I cross the line, bringing up the rear of the group. He punches a button on the wall next to him, causing a massive steel door to slam down behind me, sealing the room off from the one we had retreated into. Whoa, that was a close one there, little buddy. You almost didn't make it, the Minotaur told me as he patted me on the shoulder. You really sure she can't get through? Louis asked as he looked at the door. Oh yeah, sure thing, the Minotaur answered. It's not just the door that's separating us. It's an entire pocket dimension. Me and old Hephaestus here made the door slam shut and separate the room and the rest of this little subspace of mine. Just in case of an emergency. Good thing we did, huh? He explained with a chuckle. Guess things didn't exactly go the way you planned, did they? No, they didn't, I answered with a sigh. I'll tell you what, I hit that woman dead upside her head as hard as I could. Up a holes in mountains, bless, and she just smiled at me the whole time. Gave me a bad case of the willies. That was enough to give us time to turn tail and run, but I don't think I'm going to be able to catch her by surprise like that again either, John Henry said as he propped himself up with his hammer. We all in a mess of trouble, ain't we? I'm pretty sure we managed to piss her off pretty good. That's probably going to come back to bite us in the ass, I answered, as I turned to see the mismatched group of overpowered paranormal beings all virtually cowering in fear, hidden away in the corridors of the Minotaur. So, what's plan B? Abigail asked as she walked over next to me. I don't have one. We can't count on Athena anymore. Mika can't do it alone. Relic is, well, Relic. Hap already said he can't replace Athena. Count's still sidelined. Tom's building and all the hotel entrances are rubble. At least for now, we have to accept that we just lost. Help support the author on Patreon. Link in the description below.